I closed the door behind me, still holding the paper bag from the pharmacy. It crinkled softly in my hand as I stepped into the living room, expecting to hear nails clicking on the tile or the soft whine that always came when I'd been gone too long. But the house was still. Remy, I called. No sound, no pause, no jingle of the tag on his collar. I turned toward the corner near the window where his bed used to be. Empty. My eyes flicked to the hook by the door. The leash was still there, blue, worn smooth, where Harold's hand used to hold it every morning. Then Marcus walked out of the kitchen, wiping his hands with a towel like he'd just finished a chore. I gave him away, he said, voice too calm. I blinked. What? His face stayed still. He's just a dog, Mom. It's time you let go. Something inside me fell. I reached for the wall. You did what? My voice was thin, cracking at the edges. I found a good family. Big yard. Kids. It's better this way. Better. I stared at him, trying to read something, guilt, hesitation, anything. But his eyes slid away. He didn't even look at the empty corner. He was Harold's, I whispered. Marcus's shoulders lifted in a breath he didn't finish. Yeah. Well, Harold's gone. He disappeared down the hall without another word. I stood in the same spot for what felt like an hour. The collar still hung from the hook, cool to the touch. I ran my thumb across the nameplate, Remy, in Harold's blocky handwriting. My hand trembled. I didn't know what to do with it, or with myself. I took the collar down and sat on the edge of the couch, clutching it to my chest, like something fragile might still be inside. And then I realized I hadn't even asked where he was taken. I sat at the kitchen table with Remy's bowl in my hands, turning it slowly like it might still be warm. The house was spotless. Marcus had cleaned everything, scrubbed the counters, wiped down the windows, even swept behind the fridge. But it didn't feel clean. It felt erased. Across the room, Harold's photo leaned against the window pane. I hadn't moved it since the funeral. He was smiling in it, like he always did when he was just about to say something kind. Next to the frame was an unopened envelope from the vet, a reminder for Remy's annual checkup. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. I closed my eyes and pictured Harold on the floor, coaxing Remy to eat after his surgery. He'd roll up his sleeves, scoop wet food into his hand and whisper, "Come on, buddy, just a few more bites." Remy always did it for him. That dog wasn't just a pet. He was our third heart. The only one left, still beating after Harold was gone. Marcus came in pouring coffee, like nothing was different. "Where did you take him?" I asked. He didn't even look up. Family on the north side. Kids. Yard. It's better this way. Better. He drank from the mug that used to be Harold's. I noticed it only because of the tiny chip near the handle. Did they know who he belonged to? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He sighed, set the cup down harder than he meant to. "I didn't give them a full history, Mom. They're not adopting a person." He walked out before I could say anything else. I sat there for a long time, staring at the bowl in my hands. Better. For whom? The silence around me thickened. The chairs felt too far apart. The windows too bright. I placed the bowl on the table and pushed it away like that could make the ache go with it. Tomorrow, I decided I would find out where they lived. I left before the sun had even touched the neighbor's roof. The air bit at my cheeks, but I didn't care. I wrapped Harold's old scarf around my neck and headed toward the first shelter with a printed photo of Remy clutched in my coat pocket. The receptionist glanced at it, then at her computer. "Sorry. No match. You can try the one over on Glenwood, they take more strays." I thanked her and moved on. By the time I reached the third place, my voice had started to crack. I tried to describe him again. His right ear drooped a little. His tail curled slightly at the end when he wagged. But I could see from the woman's eyes she didn't recognize him. No chip reports. No recent golden retrievers listed. "Try again next week," she said gently. "Sometimes it takes a few days for them to show up." I walked out the door, closing behind me like a judgment. By noon, I gave up on offices and started checking side streets. I rattled a treat jar near every yard I passed, listening, praying for the jingle of his tag or the patter of his feet. Nothing. A few dogs barked. None of them were mine. A woman watering her front steps called out, "You lost your boy?" I nodded. Barely holding it together, she handed me a bottle of water. "I'll keep an eye out. You make flyers, I'll hang them." I smiled as best I could. "Thank you." I went home to ask Marcus for help with the flyers. He looked at me like I was a stranger. "Mom, it's done. He's gone. Let it be." I didn't answer. I picked up the treat jar again. The ache in my knees sharpened with every step, but I kept walking block after block past broken fences and rusted gates. I kept calling his name softer now, almost to myself. It wasn't until twilight that my legs finally gave out and I had to sit on someone's curb just to breathe again. The next morning brought rain, steady, cold, and cruel. I stood by the front door with the scarf still damp from yesterday and pulled on Harold's coat. It hung heavier on me than it used to, but I buttoned it anyway and stepped out. Durham was an hour away, and the woman on the phone hadn't sounded sure. "We might have him," she'd said. Older, golden, very quiet. Limp on the back leg. That was close enough for me. I walked faster than I should have. The sidewalks near the park were cracked and uneven, but I didn't slow down. My heart was pounding so hard, I could barely hear the traffic. I was 2 blocks away from the bus stop when my foot caught on a slab of concrete that had risen like a warning. My body hit the pavement hard. My shoulder struck first, then my side, and finally, my glasses snapped against the edge of the sidewalk. Everything blurred. A sharp heat flared in my wrist. I tried to sit up and couldn't. "Ma'am," a voice called. I looked up through raindrops and cracked lenses. A girl 16 maybe was kneeling beside me, her backpack still slung over one shoulder. "Don't move." "You hit hard." I nodded, breath catching in my throat. An hour later, I was in a hospital bed staring at the ceiling with a makeshift sling around my wrist. A nurse had asked me 3 times if I lived alone. I lied twice, then gave up on the third. Marcus arrived close to dusk, holding flowers from the hospital gift shop. He looked more annoyed than worried. "You could have called me," he muttered. I didn't answer. He sat for a while scrolling on his phone. The doctor came in and said, "I'd bruised my shoulder, badly might have a hairline fracture in the wrist." They wanted to keep me overnight. When the door finally closed again, I was alone. The lights were dim and the rain tapped against the window like it was asking to come in. I stared up and whispered, "I've lost them both." Marcus came back after dinner, still in the same wrinkled shirt from earlier, his jacket slung carelessly over one shoulder. He didn't bring more flowers this time, just dropped into the chair by the window and sat there like he'd been summoned out of obligation. He didn't speak at first. Neither did I. The hospital room hummed around us, machines' footsteps in the hallway, the occasional distant cough. He stared at the floor for a while, then finally said, "You shouldn't have gone looking." I turned my head slightly, but said nothing. He rubbed his hands together like he was trying to warm them. That dog messed everything up. Still, I waited. Something in his tone wasn't cruel. It was something else. Unsettled? Unfinished. After a long silence, his voice dropped. Every time I saw him, I saw Dad. I looked at him then. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'd come into the kitchen and he'd be sitting there. Same spot. Same look. Just waiting. It was like Dad never left. Like he'd just shifted into that dog. His throat worked hard around the next sentence. I hated it. Not the dog. Just how it made me feel. I let my breath out slowly. I didn't know what to do with that feeling, he whispered. I thought maybe if he wasn't around, it would go away. He didn't look at me, but I could see the shine in his eyes. He swiped at it with the back of his hand like he used to when he was little, and didn't want anyone to see he'd been crying. I reached out across the blanket and placed my hand over his. The skin of his knuckles was rough. His fingers didn't move at first, but he didn't pull away. We sat like that for a while, hands resting on top of each other, grief moving between us without a shape or name. Eventually, he looked out the window and said, "You're gonna need help getting home." Marcus drove me home the next morning, his grip tight on the steering wheel, his eyes fixed straight ahead. He helped me out slowly, careful with my wrist, then unlocked the front door like he hadn't stood there 100 times before. The house smelled like lemons and bleach, too clean. As I stepped inside, something shifted in my chest, not pain exactly, more like the absence of something familiar. The living room was spotless. The throw pillows had been fluffed, the rug vacuumed. No tufts of golden fur clinging to the corners. No half-chewed rope toy near the leg of the couch. The basket where Remy kept his things was gone. I moved to the kitchen. No bowl, no leash by the door. Just the photo frame on the hallway shelf, empty, like someone had taken the picture and forgotten to return it. I stood there for a moment, letting it wash over me. The erasure, but I didn't say anything. I didn't ask where the bed had gone or who he gave the leash to. I didn't scream. I didn't plead. Instead, I went to the drawer in Harold's old desk and pulled out the battered black address book we used to keep in case the power went out and we couldn't use our phones. The numbers were still there: shelters, vets, rescue networks. Some might be outdated. I didn't care. I sat down and started calling. Each time I had to say his name, Remy, I felt the burn in my throat grow a little hotter, but I kept dialing. Marcus passed behind me once, pausing when he saw the book in my lap. He didn't say a word, just moved into the kitchen and opened the fridge, rummaging loudly for something that wasn't there. That night, we sat in the same room, him on the couch, me in Harold's chair. The TV was on some old Western playing low. We didn't speak, but I watched him out of the corner of my eye. And what I saw wasn't defiance. It was a man quietly losing to memory. 2 mornings passed slow and gray. I spent them at the kitchen table with Harold's address book, redialing the same numbers, asking the same questions. Most had no record. Some never picked up. On the 3rd morning, I tried a local rescue I hadn't called before. The woman who answered sounded young, but focused. "This is Shauna," she said. "What kind of dog?" I gave the usual description. Golden retriever, 8 years old, slight limp scar on his left ear from when he caught it on the fence. Her voice softened. "I think I may have taken that dog last week," she said. "Found tied to a post outside a vet's office, no chip. He's been with me since. Sweet old thing. Very quiet. Doesn't bark much, just sits by the door." I gripped the phone tighter. "Could you send a photo?" A few minutes later, the email came through. There he was. The same eyes. Same drooping ear. A red bandana around his neck that wasn't mine, but the way he sat upright patient was all him. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I didn't wait for Marcus. I didn't leave a note. I took the car and drove following the GPS through back roads and open stretches of farmland until I pulled into a gravel driveway lined with potted plants and dog toys. The porch light was on, though it was midday. Shauna opened the door before I even got out of the car. "He's inside," she said. "Remy saw me before I saw him. I heard the nails on wood first, then the low whine, then the flash of gold. He bolted through the doorway like the world had just unlocked, ears twitching, tail wagging in full frantic circles. He crashed into my knees and buried his head in my lap, crying as I held his face in my hands. I dropped to the ground beside him, kissing his fur breath, catching with every word. "He's been waiting by the door every day," Shauna murmured. I whispered back, "Me too." I didn't call ahead, didn't knock. I unlocked the door, nudged it open with my hip, and stepped inside with Remy's leash in hand. He didn't pull. He walked slowly beside me like he knew where we were. like he never really left. Marcus appeared from the hallway, a dish towel slung over his shoulder. When he saw Remy, he stopped mid-step. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Remy didn't pause. He walked straight to the corner by the pantry and curled up on the same square of tile where he always used to nap during dinner. He didn't whine, didn't look back, just settled into the rhythm of a house that had been waiting for him. Marcus stayed frozen for a long second. Then he closed his eyes and let out a slow breath. "I'm not ready," he murmured. "I know," I said. I hung up my coat and filled a small bowl with dry food. Set it beside him like always. He ate slowly, tail-tapping the floor once every few seconds. Dinner was already on the stove. Something Marcus had made chicken? I think, though, I barely tasted it. We sat across from each other, forks scraping quietly. The clock ticked loud in the silence. Halfway through the meal, Marcus got up. He walked over to the cupboard, pulled out the stainless steel bowl, and filled it with water. He placed it next to Remy without saying a word. The dog looked up, gave one soft thump of his tail, and rested his head again. I didn't smile, but my shoulders dropped just a little. Some invisible knot gave way. Marcus returned to the table. We didn't speak again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. This one didn't press against the walls or settle in our throats. It just sat quietly between us, leaving room. After dinner, I rinsed the dishes while Marcus wiped the counters, the way we used to, without speaking, without looking up. Just familiar movements in the same old kitchen. Remy snored softly in the corner, like a third presence keeping time with us. The morning light came in quiet. I was already awake before the kettle whistled, standing by the counter, hands wrapped around a warm mug. Remy lay beneath the table, snoring softly, his paws twitching like he was dreaming of open fields. I didn't wake him. I just let the silence stretch between sips of coffee. Marcus came in a few minutes later. He didn't say anything, just poured himself a cup, sat down, and rested his elbows on the table. We didn't need words. The house felt lived in again. Not perfect, not healed, but breathing. I passed him the sugar without asking. He nodded his thanks and stirred slow and steady. After breakfast, I pulled on a sweater and clipped the leash to Remy's collar. Marcus followed without being asked. We walked the block together, the three of us, Remy trotting ahead, ears perked, tail high. The air was cool, but not sharp. The kind of morning that doesn't press down, just brushes against your skin, like it's checking if you're ready. We didn't speak until we reached the corner. Marcus slowed beside me, watching Remy sniff at a patch of grass like it was the most important discovery on Earth. "I still see Dad," he said, voice low, but clear. In the way he walked, the way he'd whistle in the garage, sometimes even in the way Remy tilts his head. I didn't interrupt. I just walked beside him. "But it doesn't hurt as much now," he added. I glanced at him. His face looked older than I remembered, not in years, but in understanding. "I'm glad he's back," he said. I was wrong. I reached over and gave his hand a gentle squeeze. He didn't pull away. We stood together at the edge of the porch when we returned, watching Remy curl up in the sunlit patch near the steps. His breathing slowed, steady and full. Neither of us said anything else. We didn't need to. Inside the window was cracked just enough to let the air move through the house, quiet and kind. I didn't bring out all the old things. Some memories were better left folded in boxes, tucked gently into corners of drawers. The shirts Harold never wore again after the diagnosis. The birthday cards we never opened. Even the leash he'd braided from an old belt, I let that stay where it was coiled and quiet. But some things I kept close. Remy still had his spot in the kitchen. I washed his blanket and laid it out fresh. His bowls returned to their corner, and the rhythm of scooping food, rinsing dishes, and hearing paws on tile found its way back without fanfare. One afternoon, Marcus asked if I still had the photo of Harold holding Remy in the backyard, the one where both were blinking at the sun. I showed him the drawer where it lived. The next day, he built a small shelf by the front door. It held that photo, a worn leather keychain Harold used to carry, and a silver dog tag engraved with Remy's name. He didn't say why. He didn't need to. We stopped talking about what had happened in the exact way people stop pressing on a bruise, because healing doesn't need reminders, only space. A week later, I came out of my room late at night for a glass of water. The living room was dark, except for the flicker of the TV, which had drifted to a screensaver. On the couch, Marcus lay asleep, his hand resting on Remy's back. The dog's head was on his chest, rising and falling with each breath. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching them. Then I pulled the throw blanket from the back of the chair, covered them both gently, and turned off the light. The quiet filled the house again, but it was no longer hollow. It was soft, like a held breath, like something fragile that had made its way back without asking. And when I stepped into the hallway, I could almost feel it, that small, steady rhythm of something broken, learning to hold itself together again.